Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Brittany K. Barnett. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, this is a Black lawyer that you need to know. She has been behind a lot of cases that you have seen in the news with huge celebrities like Kim Kardashian and some other celebrities advocating behind various like unjust convictions and things like that. So Brittany K. Burnett is definitely an Black attorney you need to know. So we're really excited to have her here today. We're going to be talking about a couple of her organizations, specifically Girls Embracing Mothers, because Mother's Day is coming up, and I think it's such an awesome organization for her to have that as a resource for girls who have moms that are currently incarcerated. But before we get into that, I make everyone do hot topics. There's a lot going on in the world.
Mm.
Um, and one of the things that is recently came in the news was the case of Jordan Neely, who was essentially choked to death in front of a cart passenger full of passengers on an NYC subway. And there's footage of it, so it's like evidence of what actually happened. And if you're not familiar with the story, essentially they claim that he was yelling. And I don't know if you've ever been on an NYC subway. I went to law school in New York. After a while, you just tune it out. Like as long as the person isn't touching you or bothering you, NYC is notorious for, homeless or people that have mental health. They get on the subways, they scream. And so supposedly he was screaming that he was hungry. He didn't care that if he died. He was thirsty, and there was a former Marine on the subway who decided to take matters in his own hand and restrain him. But restrained him to the point where he was choking him for 15 minutes, and two other passengers were actually seen in the footage helping to hold him down. And so, unfortunately, he passed away. And I don't think at the time a lot of people really knew who he was, but he's actually a very famous Michael Jackson impersonator. So like if you would go to New York and you see the street people performing, he is like known as a Michael Jackson impersonator. And so you had like local senators, you had local people in legislation who knew who he was, scream outrage that this person was literally choked to death in public, and they didn't even want to deem it a homicide at first. They literally arrested the Marine and let him go. But now that they've deemed it a homicide, obviously people are calling for this Marine and whoever participated in holding him down to be arrested. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on Jordan's situation and even how he's been villainized in the media as someone that's had, mental health issues or criminal issues in the past.
Yeah, it is horrible. My deepest condolences to his family. It was a modern day public lynching. And his murder in public, even the demonization that comes with his murder is always, every headline is appalling to me because this was a human being who lost his life in a way that was horrific in public. But all the headlines we see talk about the number of arrests that he's had, his criminal record. And it's so sad, especially with the work that I do in the criminal legal system, to continuously see these criminal records be used in a way to just dehumanize people, let alone someone who was brutally murdered. It's horrible to see. And I think that our words are so powerful. The narrative that's driven is so important. And the fact that what's front facing for the public to consume is his interactions, or his interactions with law enforcement, is a true indictment of America and their infatuation with incarceration and their desensitization to human lives being lost.
And that's a really good point, but I also just even think, clearly the man was, if he's yelling that he's hungry and thirsty, like, you know, again, I went to law school in New York, so I know what it's like to be on the subway, and you may see a homeless person or you may have someone that's having a mental health breakdown. If I can give $1, if I have an extra bottle of water, whatever. But even if you don't want to interact, you don't have to. So I think it's just unfortunate that not one, but three people participated in allowing someone to be choked to death unarmed, who he didn't touch anybody. I could see if maybe he like punched someone and then they grabbed him to maybe like restrain him. Like he didn't, there's no footage of him like physically going after anyone. And it's interesting because you know what it sounds like also to me? It sounds very George Zimmerman. Sounds like just like what happened to Trayvon Martin, where
Yeah.
he was viewed as a threat. And because there's a law in the book, stand your ground in Florida, still to this day, certain states, including Florida, have this law. If you deem someone as a threat, personally, you're biased, then you have the right to use deadly force. If you just deem them as a threat, like you are not required to walk away. Because usually in self-defense, like if there's an opportunity for you to walk away, you have to at least try that first. But in this, it's like, no, you don't have to walk away. Like you can actually approach someone and use deadly force because you deem them as a threat. So when I heard this story, I was like, it just sounds, because again, this is not a police officer, this is just a
Right.
former military guy who took it upon himself to, and even if, like I said, if you're going to restrain him, that's one thing. But you're in the Marines, so you probably know your choke hold. I mean, they're trained killers. Like they know how to, they can kill someone with their bare hands. In fact, I want to say in certain states, if you have a certain background or if you're like a boxer, like your hands are actually considered
Yeah. Weapons.
weapons. So I
Yeah.
don't know in this case would they consider his extra military training. And again, this is if they're going to actually ultimately charge him now that it's been deemed a homicide. That will they take that into consideration that what he did because of his training that may be an enhancement. I don't know. I just think again, it's just very very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And so my prayers are also with the family who I believe we put a GoFundMe on our Instagram page because they were raising money, obviously, for his funeral services because you wouldn't expect a 20-something-year-old child to be dead at this point. And actually, his mother passed away. They said that was part of his mental break, that his mom, I believe, was also
Yeah.
murdered.
I saw that. And she was unfortunately strangled to death as well, was her cause of death. And so it's just
Ooh, that's eerie.
such a vicious cycle. And the fact, to your point, did anyone think to give this man some water and food or money to go buy food or something to eat? It was tragic all the way around, through and through,
And
very sad.
I didn't know that his mother, that's how his mother, how ironic that his mother was killed.
Yeah,
Like
she was
that
murdered by a boyfriend.
it was strangled and he was
Yes,
strangled also to that. Oh
yes.
my God, the irony in that. So yes, our prayers are obviously, go out to Jordan's family. I know they're working with a couple of attorneys and a couple of like advocates. They're doing, a couple of protests at NYC. I know they did one last week. I'm glad that they had sense enough to at least deem it as a homicide. So, they
Right.
actually move forward with, they're probably trying to put together what charges they feel like they can prove. I know that the Marine actually issued a statement. He's trying to get in front of it and
Yeah.
made it seem like, oh, I was just, being a good Samaritan and protecting the people in the subway. But yeah, choking someone to death for 15 minutes. That we didn't. No one on that cart needed that. They didn't need
Yeah,
that
that's
type
not
of.
it.
Yeah, that's not it.
That's
So
not
people are
it.
like, yeah, you could have kept this press release statement in the drafts. Like
Yeah.
this press statement did and again he also villainized him. Oh, he had already assaulted some other people in the past and he already had issues. It's like again, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Nothing.
Like what did it have to do with that particular incident? It doesn't. And so I do think we have to be careful about the narratives
Yes.
when we're looking at, regardless of someone having a history or not, and how we're looking at it in that particular situation. Another case that was in the news, just to segue, there were a couple of children that were shot like back to back to back to back. There was Raphael who was literally shot in the head and I think his arm, ringing the wrong doorbell, forgot his phone. A lot of our city streets, I live on, one of the streets that I live on when I'm in DC is 18th Street. Okay. But there's an 18th place. There's so like
Yeah.
you could, if you're not
Yeah.
familiar with something, you could mix it up. And so
Mhm.
it was an honest mistake. when you look at Ralph, I think they say he's 16. He looks like he's 12. So
Yeah,
he does not, when I say this boy does not look like a threat, he doesn't. And so when the story came out that like, oh, this old man had, was fearing for his life, and even the ring door cameras, like there's nothing to support that he was like banging down the door or had even gotten past the threshold,
right.
according to the evidence they put together. So it just didn't support the narrative that he wanted to give in terms of self-defense, in terms of shooting him. And so that came out, and then just like in that same time frame, there was a Black girl by the name of Peyton Washington. I think
Oh,
we've all been there. She was a cheerleader. And this was in Texas.
yeah.
She went to the wrong car. I have a very common car. So there's so many times that I'm like, why is this door not open? And I'm thinking it's my car. I'm like, oh, I'm at the wrong car. So it's not like, and I'm an adult. I'm not even a child. So I can only imagine maybe a child not paying attention and going to the wrong door. Um, and she was shot and killed. So I mean, and this girl, I think when she was born, had a lot of issues. So she was already a fighter, they said, and she became this all-star cheerleader. For her to be dead now because she literally went into the wrong car. And so anyway, I just wanted to hear your just like your general thoughts about just like what is happening. I mean, this is clearly tied to the issue of guns in our country. You look at other countries and they just don't have these same issues. And so it's like I'm always in this kind of rock and a hard place where I believe that you should be able to protect yourself. I believe in the Constitution, the right to bear arms, but I also am just so tired of seeing these stories. So I just wanted to thoughts on just that.
Yeah, no, it's also heavy, and I'm live in Texas, and
That's
so,
right.
you can
So you
imagine.
already know.
But the interesting part about it for me is even with the cases, the murders you were just mentioning, I was in Europe for the whole time all of this was happening. I was in Europe for about 5 weeks where there are no guns. This is unheard of. So even as I'm keeping abreast as to what's happening in the States, and it's just like murder after murder after murder, it is a lot to digest on another country's grounds, and having just open dialogue with people from Europe, and it is unfathomable to them,
Yeah.
the amount of death we have here by violence and by guns. And then to get back, to America and then see what happened to Jordan. It was a lot to really carry. So for me, this issue of gun control should be foremost in people's minds and politicians' minds and decision makers and lawmakers. It is an issue that is destroying this country. Everybody, no matter what political side of the political
Yeah.
spectrum,
Doesn't
no matter
matter.
your race, like this is a human issue, and it has to stop. It has to stop.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes you live in certain parts of the country and you're like, oh, this doesn't affect me. And then all of a sudden you start to hear things. Right now I'm in the DC area, so I'm bi-coastal between DC and LA. And right now I'm in the DC area full time. And oh my gosh, like somebody literally showed up to the Annapolis, so right out of DC and Maryland, showed up to a center and like start shooting up a medical center. I don't know, the guy was like upset. So, and then like I think the other day there was a woman who shot at a pregnant woman, like they were like arguing over a guy. So just like the accessibility, and again, I don't know, maybe the gun was, violently registered. I mean, obviously she shouldn't have had it on federal property because this literally was at a post office. So this is a post
Illegal.
office, right? So you went to work as a post office worker with a gun. So that's step number one, you went wrong. And then number two, you actually discharged a weapon on the property. So, whoever this guy is, you ain't gonna see him anytime soon now that you've done what you've done. And I don't know. I just think, people always say, well, guns don't technically kill people, it's the people. And, I'm not completely against that position. I do think people are having like mental health issues, like or they don't I don't know. I don't know if the pandemic messed us up. It's like people don't know how to communicate. It's like they go from 0 to 100. There's no like, back in the day, people used to fist fight, exchange words. There were a lot of steps before you discharged the weapon. And what I'm seeing now in a lot of disagreements or a lot of misunderstandings, it's like the misunderstanding and then people kill you. There's no like
Yeah.
there's no in between. And I
There's
and
no
that's
gray
what I feel like
area.
we need to address. Like, why aren't people afraid to be discharging these weapons? Like, even if you're just being selfish, I'm not gonna discharge, I'm not trying to go to jail, which you could talk about with your projects. Like jail, prison, it's not a fun place.
Oh.
It's not a fun place. So it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take a whole lot before I'm like, okay, I feel like I have a right to discharge this weapon in your life. It's gonna take a whole lot. But I feel like with the people I've been seeing lately in these stories, people just react in the moment. They
Yeah,
really do.
it's definitely reactionary. And even with what's happening, I'm in Texas, and not even 30 minutes from me in Allen. This past weekend, there was a public shooting, and children die, children are dying.
Is
Families.
this the one at the mall? Was it at a mall?
Yes, it was
This
at
is
a
the one at the mall.
shopping
Okay.
alley. You're just out shopping. It was a beautiful day on Saturday here in the Dallas area, and someone comes and shoots up, people shopping experience and killing and children and adults. But even as we talk of, there's this discussion around guns and, guns don't kill people, people kill people. I hear all of that. And I think it's also just the easy access to it. Why does anybody need an assault rifle?
Because it's
Why?
like, are you going to war? Are you
Right.
killing animals? Yeah, it's like the type of
I don't
weapons
understand it.
they use.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like even if we're gonna have access to guns, they definitely should limit at least the type of gun. Like I said, it's very, and when you kind of try to even somewhat even try to get in a debate with someone that is, very pro, go gun
Yeah.
ownership, they can't really answer that question, because they're just focusing on you're gonna take my guns away. And we're like, we're not saying we want to take them away completely, but there should be some, just like there's regulation on alcohol, there's regulation on cigarettes, there's regulation on certain, certain things. Like it's okay to have regulation, especially if it's starting to present an issue where maybe the wrong people are getting these very dangerous weapons and committing, like you said, these crimes, and just places you wouldn't even think you would have to worry about, like
Right,
church,
exactly.
malls, and schools, and
Yeah.
places where you feel like you should be safe. I just think at this point there needs to be a midway point. My previous guest was Justice Kara Harris Bolden, and we talked a little bit like what would it look like, and she was just like, well, there could be a federal rule obviously where everyone would have to follow it, but then it could be state by state, but something should happen at least on the local level, like especially in these major places like Texas and Florida and Georgia, where you kind of see the stories the most. Like even if we're not going to start everywhere, we should at least start in the states where it seems to be a pattern of issues. And so it should just be interesting to see because we have a new
Yeah.
election coming up and things
Yeah.
like that. I don't know where the various candidates are on the gun issue, but it should be interesting to see on both the local level and even on the presidential level, like at least what they're going to tell us in terms of how
Yeah.
they plan to address it. Should be interesting to hear that. Our last hot topic story is a celebrity story. I think everybody has heard the Megan Thee Stallion shooting case with Tory Lanez like a million times. It was a circus in the media. It was just a very hard case to watch. You have someone that clearly did not shoot themselves, and then you have someone saying that like, okay, she was shot, but like I didn't do it, right? So that's what we dealt with Megan Thee Stallion, the Tory Lanez case. So specifically what I wanted to ask you, because again, you know about like appeals and the criminal system. A lot of people are wondering now that so as of 2 days ago, the judge decided the reversible errors that he stated, like, the DNA evidence with the gun, like it wasn't submitted properly to the jury, or there was testimony given from her friend Kelsey that they felt like they didn't have time to prepare to rebut it because basically he got a new lawyer because it was a
Mhm.
conflict of interest. He felt like so he listed just like various things like, oh, my lyrics were used, images with me with guns were used. Like, I just feel like I never had a standing chance with this jury. And I would just, even if I'm going to get the same result, I would like to just start over fresh and do a new trial and have everything submitted properly. So that was essentially Tory Lane's position. And the judge, unfortunately, didn't agree with him, didn't feel like, even if there were errors, they were reversible. And so now people are asking the question, you know, can he appeal? And doesn't an appeal take years, and why does an appeal take so long in criminal context?
Yeah, he can definitely appeal, and appeals take a very long time, several months to several years. And it's just because the court systems are so overwhelmed. They are not in any rush. There's no sense of urgency, even when human lives are at stake. And it just shows, just how incredibly flawed the criminal legal system is. But I do want to be very clear, even with what the judge's ruling is, like, a lot of people are outraged who support Tory and things of that nature, but the judges are looking at it from a legal perspective, and they are bound by the law. And through a lot of that, it's just like, okay, well, if that didn't happen, was there enough for a jury to still
Right.
convict? And most of the time, it is. But I definitely, one, being a Black woman, two, being from Texas,
Right.
I stand with Megan, and the justice system will play out how
Play
the
out the way it needs to
plays out.
play out. I hear you on that, and I think that's equally my position, because I can't be getting an argument on Beyonce's internet with these Tory
Listen.
Lanez. They go far hard for him. So Tory, you listening, you got some people that really go hard for you, and
Yeah.
wish you well in your future appeal.
Yeah.
So now I
And
just wanted
Megan,
to,
if you're listening, we love you.
we love you. Yes, yes. Like you said, you did not shoot yourself.
Yeah.
So yes, we love you, and we stand with protecting Black women at Black
Yes.
Podcast. And so just to segue, just more about you being a Black attorney and your journey. Obviously people see, Brittany K. Barnett now with, being in the news, and you have a book, and you have all these great organizations. But my first question to you is, well, who were you before this? Like, who were you before, like, a lawyer? Are you originally from Texas? Like, what was your journey up into, like, right before, like, law school? Who were you before?
Yeah, so I am originally from Texas, born and raised. I am from a small country town in rural East Texas, small town country girl. Always wanted to be a lawyer growing up, as touche as it may sound, but I wanted to be Claire Huxtable.
And I got the
Who's
shirt
on your
on. Claire,
shirt?
if you're watching this,
If you're
I gotta
watching
send you one of these.
Felicia, I need one. I need one of
We'll
those.
be sending you one.
I wanted to be like Claire Huxtable on the Cosby Show. Unfortunately, there were hardly any lawyers in the small town I grew up in, and there definitely weren't any lawyers, who looked like us. And so I lost sight of that dream of becoming a lawyer early on. Like, I kind of thought lawyers were out of my league, something I couldn't obtain. And in hindsight, it just shows how much representation matters. Grew up in a very close-knit family, me and my younger sister. And yeah, I'm just the country girl that you would think of from the South. I'm her. I just like the ease of life, my sweet tea and mason jar, sitting on the front porch, with my family, and just talking and barbecues. Like, I missed it all. So I really crave that, and try to go. That's my solace, my sole refuge is going home,
Especially and with everything that's going on in the world, it's just nice to have a place where there's, like, peace. I always tell you
Yeah.
to not put a price tag on your freedom or
Right.
on your peace,
Yeah.
And well, with that being said, you said at one point maybe you kind of lost sight of maybe becoming a lawyer. You thought that maybe it was out of your reach. So how did you actually say, okay, you know what, I'm actually going to try to go to law school. I'm going to apply. Like, what was there anything that happened specifically in your undergrad? Where did you go to undergrad?
I went to University of Texas in
Okay.
Arlington.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so at what point in your journey in college you were like, I think I'm going to try?
Yeah, there was. So I ended up majoring in accounting. And so I got an undergrad degree and a master's degree in accounting. And I was preparing to study for the CPA exam, the Certified Public Accountant exam, and had a job lined up. I was going to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I had a mentor who was just amazing. And I was borrowing his books to study for the CPA exam. So I didn't have money to pay for the course because my mom was in prison at the time. And just the dream of being a lawyer always stuck at the fringes of my mind. And I remember saying to him, just to see what he would say, hey, Ken, thanks for the books. How's it going? I'm thinking about going to law school. What do you think? And he
Mhm.
said, "Oh, Brittany, you should definitely go to law school." He was like, "I'm actually starting law school in the fall." He said he had applied to SMU in Dallas and he was starting in the fall. And in that moment, I was so happy for him. I'm like, "Oh, wow, Ken's going to law school." But I also remember thinking, now, wait a minute, if Ken can go to law school, I know I can go to
You
law
go to
school.
law school.
It just brought that proximity. It's so important. It's so important. And that was the moment I was like, if Ken can do it, I can do it
You
too.
can do it. Okay. Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken,
Yeah.
for inspiring her to go. So, what law school did you end up going to?
I went to SMU in
You go
Dallas.
to SMU. Okay. And what was your favorite law school class and maybe the class that you didn't really like that much?
My favorite law school class was critical race theory.
Okay.
And it is where I even started doing the work that I do. I learned of these issues, as it related to the criminal legal system in critical race theory. And the one I didn't like property law. I hated property
Hard.
law.
That's so hard. I remember that one too. That was not one. I don't know. Like you said, I felt like I couldn't really connect with it.
Yeah, I'm like, we don't talk like this. It's like, what is, yeah, that property
Rules
law.
of perpetuity.
Exactly. I
Hitting
still couldn't
everybody on the bar
explain it.
exam. Like I'm like, I still probably can't answer that question.
I can't either. I think I learned it enough to hopefully that helped me pass the bar exam, but I don't remember none of that.
Oh wow. Very cool. Very cool. Now the law school you were at, was it what was the breakdown? Was it like in terms of like the racial breakdown? Was it
Uh,
majority like
um,
white? Do you recall?
SMU's white.
It was
It's
white,
a,
white.
it's a
Okay.
private college, PWI, white.
White,
Um,
white.
there were probably less than 5%
Less than 5%.
graduating
Which
class.
I mean sounds about right. I mean, people get tired of me saying this statistic over and over again, but I'm gonna say it until it changes. But less than 5% of the black profession, US lawyers
Yeah.
are black. So it's not surprised that less than 5% of, your school would be black. And so when you were there, did you face like, even if it wasn't like outward discrimination, but was there ever a moment where you were like, I feel like they're doing this maybe because I'm a black student, maybe if I was a white student, maybe it'd be a class, a teacher, organization. Did you ever experience anything where you felt like you were being discriminated against?
No, I would be
Not at school.
dishonest to say
Okay.
that. No, I
Okay.
didn't. But I was that law student that just went to school. I was very involved with the Black Law Schools Association. I was a regional board member, so I got involved a lot through that way. But other than that, I really just went to school because
Went to
I was
school, head down.
already like a
Right.
lot of most law students, they're coming straight out of undergrad.
Right.
And I had already gotten a master's. I had worked for 2 years at
Yeah,
PwC, and I
that's true.
came back. So, I had already been there, done that with the fraternizing, and
Then
so
the dynamic. And you
yeah,
mentioned that you are, primarily a corporate attorney. How is that space? Because again, I'm sure you're very, there's very few of you in your space. I know a
yes.
lot of students that listen to their podcasts, that is like the number one area that they're interested in corporate law. So if someone were to pursue corporate law, do you have like any tips since you've kind of gone down this path already?
Yeah, I would encourage them to do it, because we need us there. I was a CPA, so it was a natural fit for me to do corporate law. I did corporate finance and then went in-house and did M&A work. And it honestly was a lot of work. It was hard work and challenging, but the M&A side for me, it gave me just this incredible boost to my business sense, of being able to learn all sides of the business, but then also hoping you get in a company, with upper level management that invest in you, and support you. Luckily, I had that, though I did resign from corporate law a few years ago to really just focus my talents on the impact I could make in the criminal legal space, but also the impact I can make using my corporate skills to help formerly incarcerated people who have dreams of being entrepreneurs. And so trying to find an intersection of my abilities and my passion, for freedom. But I don't discourage anyone from especially someone Black, from becoming a lawyer, if that's what their dreams are, of working in corporate law, if that's what their dreams are. I think everyone's experience is different.
Right.
And I did not have a bad experience. I learned a lot.
Well, and it's good that, like you said, you already had that accounting background. I always tell people, some people are like, what should I major in? I'm like, to be honest with you, I feel like the people that did the best were the people that were math, accounting, engineers, and I think it's because it's the logic part. To me, they did better than, someone, I majored, of course, a lot of people do political science, or they'll do government as a major. Right. Because that's kind of like the typical track. But I'm like, no, you don't necessarily. The gag is you can actually technically major in anything and apply to law school. Yeah, there's no set major. So I always tell people, there may be some things you should maybe take a look at in terms of background and skill set. But to be honest with you, you get to law school, you start all over. They teach you how to think over, write over any. I tell people I literally could have went from high school to law school, because literally there was nothing in college that prepared me for law school. I literally started back over at zero in terms of how they retrain you how to write and think. But yeah, no, I think that's interesting that you have this background. This is why I love doing these interviews, because I would have never known that was like your major and that was your
most people have no idea, and it's
so you can't mess with your money. You can't mess with your money because you have that background.
They just see this whole criminal justice.
Yeah, no, I don't think a lot of people would know. Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. I love that. And I think that's a great segue to kind of my last questions for you. You said you recently kind of segued out of the corporate law space to really follow your passions, and one of those passions is people that are affected by our criminal justice system. And so I know you have the Buried Alive project, and I know you have the Girls Embracing Mothers. So could you just tell our audience quickly a little bit about both of those, and maybe something coming up that maybe our audience can support with either one of the organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Buried Alive project, I co-founded with two of my former clients, and we work to free people. We work to free people who are serving unjust sentences in federal prison under these outdated federal drug laws. And to date, we have helped free over 60 men and women who were serving life without parole sentences for federal drug offenses. And so that is an organization we launched about 5 years ago, and just picking locks, to human cages. Girls Embracing Mothers is my baby. We celebrate 10 years this year of that organization, and we work to empower women and girls who've been impacted by the criminal legal system. Our primary service is working with girls whose mothers are incarcerated. So as I mentioned, my mom was incarcerated, and it's devastating to have any loved one in prison. But I can honestly say that when it's your mama, it's a primal wound. And so
how long was your mom incarcerated when you were growing up?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah. And so it felt like forever, so I can't imagine her having a life sentence, so that's the drive with the people we help with the Buried Alive project. But Girls Embracing Mothers, we're based primarily in Texas. We're expanding this year to Arkansas and Mississippi and a couple of other states in the South, and really partnering with prisons to take young girls to visit their mothers in prison. We partner with Texas Women's Prisons the past 10 years. We take girls to visit their moms in prison every single month. We take in food, eat lunch with the moms. We have a healing justice curriculum. We do art therapy, really working to break the cycle and build a bond.
I know Mother's Day is coming up. Are you doing? I know one of the things we like to do, if someone comes on our podcast and they have an organization, we're going to put in the bio link, in the episode, and wherever you can find the episode, the link where people can donate. Are you guys doing anything for like Mother's Day coming up?
Yeah, so I'll be going to the prison on Saturday. We're taking girls to the prison on Saturday to visit their moms. We have some special art therapy sessions we're going to bring in food, and really looking forward to that. As I mentioned, it is a primal wound to be separated from your mama. And the one thing, even though I was a young adult when my mom went to prison, that I had in common with the younger girls is that we love our mamas. And so to be able to go in the day before Mother's Day is very special, for us to have that time with the women and really work, as I said, to promote healing justice and break intergenerational cycles,
Yes. Yes, I
heal
think that's
heal intergenerational trauma, break generational cycles, and that's really what we aim for. We are also prepping for our 6th annual summer camp next
okay.
month. Yeah, so mid-June, every year we take about 25 girls whose mothers are incarcerated on a week-long summer camp. This will be our 6th one. And so, yeah, any support for summer camp, whether it's
Yes, yes, we
financial
want to
or
support.
in-kind donations for camp, it's our largest event and overnight camp for 4 nights with 25 girls.
Yeah,
So,
that's a lot.
so we
Sounds
have a
sounds
lot of
fun.
fun. We have a
Yes.
lot of fun. I like to say what makes us unique with Girls Embracing Mothers is because it's a group of girls with shared lived experience. And so there's the stigma is removed. The shame is removed. Everyone's going through the same thing and can empower and build each other up in that way. And I hope by my own personal story, my mother has been free from prison and sober, 15 years now. She works for the organization. And I just hope and pray that through our story, that we can show the cycle, which often accompanies incarceration, it can be broken.
And I know she's so proud of you. You became an attorney and all of that. So, and I think it's so awesome that she works with the organization.
Yeah.
And I definitely think it helps to have a story that hits home because someone can say, well, you don't really know how I feel. You don't know what I'm going through. But you're like, no, I actually do.
Yeah. I,
Here's my mom who went through it with me. So I love that she works as a part of your organization. So, yes, we will definitely make sure our audience has the link to donate. We definitely want to give you some donations ahead of
thank
the summer
you.
camp. So, we're really excited to help you with that. Um, and I will say this, you made the point that part of the reason why you went to law school was that, someone that kind of looked like you, actually went. What you're doing is actually going to help probably encourage maybe one of the girls that, you work with, maybe one of them may want to become a lawyer. You just never know who you meet or what organization, as a young adult or as a child, like that impression. Because a lot of times people say, well, what can be done? Like the 5%, it won't move. Like less than 5% of attorneys are Black. Why doesn't that number move? It moves when you have people like yourself and myself that are really out in this space and really,
Yeah.
like you said, visually being representations of this can be done if this is something you're interested in. It's not impossible. This t-shirt that I'm going to be sending you, Black TV Lawyer t-shirt, we have several collections. This collection specifically fundraises
Mm,
for bar exam fees because you already know that's expensive.
yeah.
Someone could be as smart as they want, but they might not even have money to take the bar.
Yeah.
Books each semester, so we give one at least we try to do more than one, but minimum we do one book scholarship, one bar exam fee scholarship, because we understand that sometimes people even want to do it, but they literally are financially not in the position
Right.
to. So
I love
super excited
that.
to continue to support. You'll definitely get your shirt. You can tell everybody all about it. They got it from Black Lawyers Podcast. We end each episode with a Black Excellence Moment of the Week. I'm sure you have heard of Angel Reese by now. If you know, you went overseas for
Yeah.
5 weeks, but she took the college basketball world by storm and won with her team LSU. And right now, I think before going into March Madness, I think they call it her Neil evaluation. So the evaluation of how much you can sell your likeness for. So if you're listening to this, it was only in 2021 that college athletes were
Yeah.
allowed to enter into legal contracts for their likeness, name and image and likeness. So it's very cool that, first of all, it's crazy they didn't have that rule before, but now that that rule is on the books, college athletes like Angel Reese can again partner with brands and partnerships and make money, which I think is really cool. So going into March Madness, I think she was valuated like 371,000. Now she's valued at $1.4 million. She is the highest in terms of their evaluation, they'll evaluate.
Ah,
And I believe her name is Flage. I think that her teammate is
yeah.
right behind her as number two. So out of all the college athletes, they are the reigning top two right now in terms of a Neil evaluation. And she just signed a recent deal with Sports Illustrated and a couple of other companies.
I
So
love
she's
it.
definitely taking advantage of name, image, and likeness deals.
Yeah.
And so we're really proud of her. And again, I think it's just another example. I mean, she's dominating mostly a male dominated sport, a white dominated sport. So to be a Black female and be in this sport, I think it's amazing that with the various partnerships and deals she'll continue to be able to put her face out there. And if someone wants to play basketball, like they'll know that it's possible because someone like her that looks like her is actually doing it. So anyway, shout out to Angel Reese. You are our Black Excellence Woman
Yes.
of the Week. Don't spend all your money in one place. And with that being said, we are always rooting for everyone Black. Take care, everyone.